Richard White is an unusual billionaire. Now, for starters, he still lives in his childhood home in the southwest Sydney suburb of Bexley. Then there's his true passion, music, rock music and guitars. His first business as a young man was tuning, tweaking and repairing guitars for emerging Aussie pub bands like The Angels and ACDC. Famously, Richard White was ACDC's guitar technician. You've never really lost the guitar technician in you, have you?
No. Well, it was really the guitar player, because whilst the technician was a great way of me funding myself, because I certainly wasn't making money as a musician, I really love doing technical things and solving problems, and the guitars are just a symbol of that past, that sort of where I started.
But wealth does bring its benefits. A cloud guitar used by Prince on his Purple Rain tour. Purple Rain, Purple Rain. Worth around $500,000. Other versions of it are in the Smithsonian Museum in America. Richard's passion for fixing things, though, followed him through his business career. First guitars, then lighting, then software. He taught himself to code and spotted a gap in logistics, the ability to move goods from one place to another as quickly and cheaply as possible. From there came WiseTech, a software company started in 1994, before the internet, before iPhones. Does it show that you can build from the ground up in Bexley, in New South Wales?
You can do it anywhere, really. And in fact, you know, Silicon Valley is no longer Silicon Valley. It's anywhere you want it to be, because the technology, the internet, we can build anything from Australia if we put our minds to it.
Today, WiseTech has 50 offices worldwide. Its software is used by 18,000 logistics companies, including 24 of the world's top 25 freight forwarders. It's valued at $16 billion. Richard owns 44%. But as WiseTech grew, Richard repurchased and settled in the very same house he grew up in, just down the road from his old primary school, Bexley Public. Why? I mean, a lot of other people would have moved or gone somewhere. You stayed. Why is that?
I just think that this feels like right for me. It feels like a great place to branch out from here. I've obviously travelled a lot and I've been a lot of different places, but this feels like home.
Since its annual results were released a week or so ago, WiseTech shares have soared 35%. Richard White's wealth has grown. More than James Packer, Pokey's King Len Ainsworth and Hungry Jack's Jack Cowan. And to think, he could have been a guitar player.
I was a good player, but I needed to feed myself. I just needed to be responsible and make enough money to actually pay my own way and not live off my parents or whatever. So I felt like it was important that I did something that actually turned a profit.
And how do you reckon you got
on? I'm probably okay. I'm still working on it.
But if you want to talk to Richard White about WiseTech, there's just one place to go: Bexley.
The results are fantastic, and I'm really happy for everybody that we've been able to deliver that. But this was always where it was going to be. When we started with our very strong acquisition strategy, we knew exactly what we were doing, we knew how long it was going to take, we knew roughly where we were going to buy and what we were going to buy and how we were going to buy it. And we were doing something to solve a fundamental problem. It wasn't a revenue roll-up. We weren't buying to grow revenue. We were buying to gain access to very complicated and sophisticated technology, knowledge and people, and feet on the ground in economies that we couldn't penetrate without those businesses.
So Richard, your software now is used by 10 of the 20 top logistics companies in the world. Why is it that they use your software from Bexley in Sydney, Australia, compared with somebody else's software somewhere else in the world?
It's a great question. So I've always had this view that there are complex problems in the world that can be broken down and solved very deeply if you just persist and look carefully at what's going on. And I've always been sort of a problem solver, and I've surrounded myself with a lot of very smart people that are also love to find root cause analysis and solve deep problems. And when you look at the logistics industry, it grew up from these very separated, segregated agency systems that were quite good when there wasn't an internet and then when there wasn't the ability to communicate globally and connect systems globally. Once the internet happened, there was a need for a very different approach. And in the early days of WiseTech, I figured out how that would look and the model, and we coded that model into our second generation software which was called EDI Enterprise. And in 2014, we amplified that strategy even more with CargoWise One. Now, what it did is it solved a fundamental problem of these businesses that grew up in these fractured and fragmented ways, but are now global and highly integrated. The software is very integrated, and it has a complete through data processing process. So you never re-enter the data. It travels from the moment of a buying decision through the exporter, through the customs boundaries, across the international air and sea processes, and into the destination country, through the warehouse into the ultimate factory or consumer or wherever. And that subtlety was lost on almost everybody until well after we were dominant in the space. We now have a platform which is very cost effective. It saves lots and lots of IT costs inside our big customers. It makes their operational efficiency much higher, much more fundamental. It makes it much easier to run the business globally because it's on a single global database and operates everywhere as one single function. And it also has improved their business model so that the bigger guys can actually acquire business and roll up into those businesses and rapidly consume those acquisitions and make those acquisitions efficient on this new, very efficient platform.
The thing that's a little different about your business, and you indeed, is you started this business in 1994. This is not some recent tech startup that's actually suddenly emerged from the blocks. This has been, quite a slow build and an evolution in many ways as a business.
Yes, that's true. And doing that gave us enormous understandings of what was going on in Australia, because my original plan was to be successful in Sydney. And then we did that and we went, well, that's got to be Australia then. And when we went to the end of Australia, we said, I guess we've got to globalise.
So there's lots of companies, Australian companies, that go overseas. They fail overseas, or indeed they lose their way and they lose their Australian business. Why in the case of WiseTech did you somehow get bigger and better as you went overseas? No,
well, the Australian business was quite strong, and we took proper careful steps. We've acquired for a long time. Acquisitions are a good way of learning about a new marketplace. The reason why acquisitions are powerful in technology is because you bring a whole solution and a team that understands the solution and knows the customers, knows the government officials at the borders, knows all the bits and pieces that are very complicated that you can't do at scale at a massive distance. And so we bought a business in Chicago. That proved to be very helpful in the US market, which is a big market, as you know. And we won some customers in Europe and grew the business in Europe and made mistakes, fell over ourselves a few times, got a bloody nose, but it was very small comparatively. We got up, dusted ourselves off, and by 2007, we had a business that was starting to really amplify. And then we had to start changing the model because of the growth and because of the nature of the complexities of the industry.
And as WiseTech's got bigger, has it been a situation where you've had to start taking over larger companies rather than the smaller companies, a collection of smaller companies you took over, simply because you need companies of scale to make a difference to your business these days?
Well, I think the correct answer is that we don't need large businesses to acquire to make the business capable. We're building an ecosystem. And we might need to add some small things on to make that ecosystem better and faster and more valuable for our customers, but it doesn't need a massive business to make us successful. In fact, I would argue the reverse, is that you take these small bites and they're all quite consumable. You take a big bite of something, you spend all of your time trying to figure out what's going on and how to integrate the cultures and deal with all the other things. Like we finished our main run of acquisitions, 39 of them, in sort of 2019, and nothing to do with the stuff that was going on in the markets. We were just finished our program. And we did another one recently, probably about a year ago, because we needed to get into Japan. And can you imagine an Australian company speaking English trying to be successful in Japan? That would just not work. So we bought a small business, 6 people, very clever, a piece of software that works at the customs borders. That helps us massively in Japan.
Richard White, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.